I can't breathe. My fingers trembled as I stared at the photographs spread across my wedding dress. The images were unmistakable. My fiancé Michael and my mother, locked in an embrace that no future son-in-law and mother-in-law should ever share. Their hands, their lips, their naked bodies tangled in the sheets of what I recognized as my mother's guest bedroom. The timestamp on the photos, last Thursday, just 9 days before our wedding. I sank to the floor of the bridal suite, my $5,000 custom gown pulling around me like a deflated dream. Outside, I could hear bridesmaids laughing, champagne corks popping. In 45 minutes, I was supposed to walk down the aisle. In 45 minutes, my father would give me away to a man who had already been with my mother. My phone buzzed. "Michael, can't wait to see you, beautiful. I love you." I lurched toward the bathroom and vomited. The white envelope had arrived just minutes earlier, hand-delivered by the hotel concierge. For the bride's eyes only, the elegant handwriting read, "No sender, no return address." Inside, 12 photographs and a handwritten note. "You deserve to know before you say, I do." The knock at the door made me flinch. "Olivia? Honey, it's time for final touches." My mother's voice, cheerful and excited, as if she hadn't destroyed everything. I wiped my mouth and stood up, catching my reflection in the mirror. Mascara streaked down my cheeks, lipstick smudged. In that moment, something hardened inside me. "Just a minute," I called, my voice surprisingly steady. I gathered the photos and slipped them into my garter. 200 guests were waiting. $50,000 spent. A lifetime of dreams about to implode. But the bride was ready for a different kind of ceremony. "You look absolutely stunning," my mother gushed, adjusting my veil in the antechamber of the Santa Barbara Oceanside Chapel. She wore a tasteful blue dress that I'd helped her choose, her silver-streaked dark hair, so similar to mine, elegantly styled. "Michael won't be able to take his eyes off you." "I'm sure he won't," I replied, meeting her gaze in the mirror. "He seems to have a thing for the women in our family." Her hands froze on my veil. "What did you say?" The bridesmaids were busy taking selfies in the corner. My brother James stood by the door, checking his watch. "Nothing, Mom," I smiled. "Just wedding day jitters." Relief washed over her face. "That's normal, sweetheart. I was terrified before I married your father." "Was that before or after you started sleeping with other men?" Asterisk I wanted to ask, but bit my tongue. The envelope in my garter felt like it was burning through the silk. "Everyone ready?" the wedding coordinator asked, popping her head in. "The groom is at the altar, looking very handsome." My mother squeezed my hands. "This is it, baby girl. Your perfect day." I squeezed back, perhaps a little too hard. "Yes, everything is going to be exactly as it should be." My father appeared, handsome in his tuxedo, his eyes misty as he took me in. "You're beautiful, Liv," he whispered, kissing my cheek. Did he know? Could he possibly know what his wife of 30 years had been doing with his future son-in-law? The music started. Wagner's Bridal Chorus. The bridesmaids lined up, my college roommate Lisa giving me a thumbs up as she prepared to walk ahead of me. Lisa, who I'd confided in last month about my worries that Michael seemed distant. Pre-wedding stress, she'd assured me. All guys get weird before the big day. Now I wondered if she knew too. My father offered his arm, and I took it, my other hand clutching my bouquet so tightly the stems began to crush. Through the windows, I could see the Pacific Ocean stretching endlessly behind the glass altar, the April sun making the water shimmer. The perfect backdrop for the perfect Santa Barbara wedding. The perfect backdrop for what I was about to do. The doors opened. 200 faces turned toward me, smiling, some already dabbing at tears. At the end of the aisle, Michael stood tall and handsome in his black tux, his face breaking into that smile I'd fallen in love with 4 years ago when we'd met at a marketing conference in Los Angeles. What a performance. What a liar. What a betrayal. I started walking, my father's arms steady beneath my trembling hand. Each step felt like moving through molasses. Michael's eyes never left mine, his expression one of adoration and awe. "You're a good actor, asterisk," I thought, "but today isn't going your way." Halfway down the aisle, I paused. The music continued, but confusion rippled through the guests. My father leaned closer. "Liv? You okay?" I wasn't okay. I would never be okay again. But I was clear about what needed to happen next. I reached under my dress and pulled out the envelope. The gasps were audible as I broke from my father's arm and walked the rest of the way alone, not to the altar where Michael waited, but to the microphone stand the minister would use for the ceremony. "Olivia?" Michael's voice carried across the suddenly silent chapel. "What's going on?" I adjusted the microphone, the envelope clutched in my white-knuckled grip. "I want to thank everyone for coming today," I said, my voice echoing through the space. Family, friends, colleagues who traveled from across the country to be here. Confused murmurs filled the room. In the front row, my mother's face had turned ashen. Michael took a step toward me, but I held up my hand. "Before we proceed, I recently received some information that I think changes today's plans." I opened the envelope. Someone was kind enough to send me these photographs this morning. I thought I should share them with all of you, so we all understand exactly what kind of wedding this was going to be. "Olivia, don't." My mother's voice, desperate and shrill. But I was already holding up the first photo, turning slowly so the entire room could see my fiancé and my mother locked in a passionate kiss. The silence detonated into chaos. "You've ruined everything," Lisa hissed, blocking the door to the bridal suite where I was gathering my things. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" I looked at her, really looked at her, for the first time that day. Her face was flushed with something beyond embarrassment or concern. Something like fury. Something like guilt. "You knew," I said, the realization crashing over me. "You knew about them." Lisa's eyes darted away. "It wasn't what you think. It was just what? Just sex? Just betrayal? Just the two people I trusted most in the world stabbing me in the back." I shoved the last of my belongings into my overnight bag. "Get out of my way, Lisa." "Where are you going to go?" "What are you going to do?" she demanded. "You just humiliated your entire family in front of everyone they know." They humiliated me. I corrected her. "I just made sure everyone knew the truth." Someone knocked on the door. "Liv." It was James, my brother. "Can I come in?" I nodded, and Lisa reluctantly stepped aside. James entered, his face grim, but his eyes, so like mine, so like our mother's, steady and clear. "Dad's taking Mom home," he said quietly. Michael left. "Most of the guests are gone." "And the Prestons?" I asked, referring to Michael's shell-shocked parents. "They're still in the chapel." "I think they're in shock." He ran a hand through his hair. "Jesus, Liv. How long have you known?" "About an hour," I said, zipping my bag closed. "Someone sent me the photos right before the ceremony." James's eyebrows shot up. "Wait, you just found out? Today?" "Holy shit. You sound surprised." His expression turned guarded. "I just meant, that was quick thinking on your part." A cold weight settled in my stomach. "You knew too, didn't you?" James looked away. "I had suspicions. I saw them together at Christmas. They were too friendly." "And you didn't tell me?" "I wasn't sure," he said defensively. "And then last month, I confronted Mom. She swore it was over, that it was just a mistake, a moment of weakness." I laughed, a harsh sound that hurt my throat. A moment that lasted through 12 photos and God knows how many encounters. "I'm sorry, Liv. I should have told you." He reached for me, but I stepped back. "Were you going to sit there today and watch me marry him, knowing what you knew?" His silence was answer enough. "Get out," I whispered. "Liv, get out." I screamed, throwing my bouquet at him. White roses scattered across the floor like casualties. When the door closed behind him, I sank onto a chair, still in my wedding dress, staring at the envelope that had blown my life apart. Who had sent it? Who else knew about Michael and my mother? And why tell me now on my wedding day instead of months ago when I might have been spared this public humiliation? My phone buzzed. A text from Michael. We need to talk. There's more to this than you know. I turned off my phone. The beach house had been my escape plan. Ironically, a surprise for Michael. I'd rented it for our wedding night, a private retreat before we left for our honeymoon in Bali. Now it became my fortress, a place to hide from the wreckage of my life. I stood on the deck overlooking the Pacific, still wearing my wedding dress because I couldn't bear to take it off. Taking it off would mean accepting that this day, this nightmare, was real. The sun was setting, turning the water to fire. In another universe, Michael and I would be toasting with champagne, laughing about cake mishaps or drunk uncles, looking forward to our first night as husband and wife. Instead, I was alone, scrolling through dozens of missed calls and messages. From Michael, please let me explain. From my mother, it meant nothing. Call me. From James, where are you? Everyone's worried. From Lisa, you're being dramatic. It happened once. From my father, nothing. The knock on the door startled me. I froze, not daring to breathe. How had anyone found me? Olivia? A familiar voice, but not one I expected. It's Cassie. Cassie Preston. Michael's sister. I hesitated, then moved to the door. Through the peephole, I could see Cassie standing alone, her bridesmaid dress replaced with jeans and a sweater, her face puffy from crying. I opened the door slightly. How did you find me? The rental agreement was in the wedding folder. I took a chance. She held up a bottle of whiskey. I thought you might need this. Against my better judgment, I let her in. Cassie had always been kind to me, the sister I'd never had. We weren't close, but she'd been enthusiastic about the wedding, helping with plans whenever she visited from Seattle. I'm so sorry, she said, taking in my disheveled appearance and the still pristine wedding dress. What my brother did, what your mother did, it's unforgivable. I collapsed onto the couch, suddenly exhausted. Did you know? No, she said firmly, pouring whiskey into 2 glasses she'd found in the kitchen. Though in retrospect, there were signs. Michael being secretive with his phone, making excuses to skip family events, but then I'd find out he was in Santa Barbara anyway. She handed me a glass, and I took a grateful sip, welcoming the burn. How long do you think it was going on? Cassie sat beside me, careful not to crush my dress. I don't know. But Olivia, there's something else you should know. She took a deep breath. Michael and I aren't close, but last Thanksgiving, he confided in me that he was having doubts about the wedding. Not about you. He said he loved you, but about the situation. It didn't make sense then, but now. Now it does, I finished bitterly. He was sleeping with my mother and feeling guilty. I think it was more than that. Cassie pulled out her phone. He sent me this text yesterday. I didn't understand it at the time. She showed me the screen. Michael had written, "Whatever happens tomorrow, remember there's more to the story." Some people aren't who they seem. I stared at the cryptic message, anger bubbling up again. What, is he trying to blame my mother? Say she seduced him? He's 32 years old, not some naive teenager. I don't know, Cassie admitted. But there's something else. She hesitated. The photos. Do you know who sent them? No idea. The envelope just arrived at my room. Don't you think the timing is suspicious? On your wedding day? Why not a week ago or a month ago? I hadn't considered that. What are you suggesting? I'm not sure, she said slowly. But someone wanted maximum damage, maximum humiliation. For you, for Michael, for your family. The whiskey turned sour in my stomach. Who would hate us all that much? I don't know. But those photos. She trailed off. What about them? Cassie looked uncomfortable. When you held them up in the church, I noticed the angle. They looked like surveillance photos. Not something taken by a jealous ex or a concerned friend. A chill ran through me despite the warmth of the evening. You think someone was spying on them? On us. I think there's more going on than an affair. She put her glass down. Michael told me once that your family's marketing firm handles some sensitive accounts. Government contracts, political campaigns. Yes, but what does that have to do with anything? Maybe nothing. Maybe everything. She stood up. Look, I should go. My parents are devastated, trying to make sense of this. But I wanted you to know that I'm on your side and that I think there's more to the story. After she left, I sat in the darkening room, staring at the envelope that had destroyed my life. For the first time, I really looked at it. The expensive paper, the precise handwriting, the lack of postmark. Someone had hand-delivered this information, timed for maximum effect. I emptied the envelope completely, examining each photo carefully. They were high quality, clearly showing Michael and my mother in various compromising positions. But Cassie was right. The angles were odd, as if taken from above or through partially open doorways. The note slipped out last. You deserve to know before you say, I do. Simple, direct, anonymous. But as I turned it over, I noticed something I'd missed in my earlier shock. A tiny emblem embossed in the corner of the paper. A stylized DP in gold leaf. DP. Dela Cruz Partners. My mother's biggest client, a PR firm that specialized in crisis management for political figures. The firm that had recently been embroiled in a scandal involving campaign finance and blackmail. The firm that my mother had insisted our family business continue working with, despite my father's concerns about their ethics. Suddenly, Michael's cryptic text made more sense. Some people aren't who they seem. My hands shaking, I turned my phone back on. Dozens more notifications appeared, but I ignored them, opening my browser instead. I searched for Dela Cruz Partners scandal and began reading. 3 hours and 2/3 of a whiskey bottle later, I had a theory. Dela Cruz Partners had been accused of blackmailing political opponents using compromising photos and information. They'd been cleared in court, but rumors persisted. The CEO, Victor Dela Cruz, had a reputation for ruthlessness and a long memory for slights. 6 months ago, my mother had testified in a civil case involving Dela Cruz. She'd been subpoenaed, forced to hand over documents that allegedly showed questionable billing practices. The case had been dismissed, but not before causing embarrassment for Dela Cruz. What if this was revenge? What if Michael hadn't been sleeping with my mother out of lust or love, but because he'd been compromised somehow? Blackmailed, perhaps, or manipulated. It still didn't excuse his betrayal. But it might explain it. My phone rang, startling me. A known caller flashed on the screen. Against my better judgment, I answered. Hello, Olivia. A man's voice, smooth and professional. I hope I'm not interrupting your wedding night. I sat up straight, suddenly cold sober. Who is this? A friend. Someone who thought you deserved the truth. You sent the photos. I merely delivered information you had a right to know. What you did with it was your choice. Quite the spectacle, by the way. I admire your courage. What do you want? I demanded, my voice shaking. Want? I've already gotten what I wanted. Your mother humiliated, your wedding ruined, your family business about to implode from scandal. All quite satisfying. Victor Dela Cruz, I guessed. A pause, then a chuckle. Very good. Though I prefer to remain anonymous for this conversation. You set this up. You set them up. Now, that's giving me too much credit. I didn't force your fiancé to sleep with your mother. I merely created opportunities, planted suggestions, applied pressure where needed. I don't believe you, I said, but doubt crept in. They chose to do this. Oh, they did. But with the right leverage, people can be nudged toward bad decisions. Your mother, for instance, was concerned about some financial irregularities I discovered in your family's business. Irregularities that could have sent your father to prison. And Michael, well, he had his own vulnerabilities. My head spun. Why are you telling me this? Professional courtesy, he replied smoothly. You showed unexpected adaptability today. Most brides would have canceled quietly, avoided the scene. You chose public exposure. That suggests a certain fortitude I can appreciate. You destroyed my life to get revenge on my mother. I said flatly. I helped you avoid a marriage based on lies, he corrected. But yes, revenge was my primary motivation. Your mother cost me clients and credibility with her testimony. Actions have consequences. So do phone calls admitting to blackmail and manipulation, I retorted, pressing the record button on my phone. Another chuckle. Smart girl. But that would be your word against mine, and I've already destroyed your family's credibility. Besides, this call is routed through 4 countries. Good luck tracing it. He hung up, leaving me staring at my phone in disbelief. The knock at the beach house door came at midnight. This time, I knew who it was before I checked. Michael, I said flatly as I opened the door. He looked terrible. Tie gone, shirt rumpled, eyes bloodshot. Thank God you're okay. I've been looking everywhere. I'm not okay, I replied, not inviting him in. I'm about as far from okay as a person can get. Olivia, please. You have to let me explain. His voice cracked. It wasn't what it looked like. Really? Because it looked like you were fucking my mother. He flinched. That happened. But not the way you think. Dela Cruz set you up, I said, watching his face carefully. He manipulated you both. Michael's jaw dropped. How did you? Did he contact you? He called to gloat about ruining our wedding. Apparently, my mother's testimony cost him, and this was his revenge. Let me in, Liv. Please. It's not safe to talk out here. Against my better judgment, I stepped aside. Michael entered, but kept his distance, as if afraid I might attack him. Fair enough, the thought had crossed my mind. Dela Cruz approached me 8 months ago. He began without preamble. Said he had evidence of tax fraud at my parents' company. He showed me documents, said he'd turn them over to the IRS unless I did him a favor. Sleeping with my mother was the favor? I asked incredulously. Michael ran a hand through his hair. No. God, no. He wanted information about your family's business, your clients. I refused at first, but then he showed me the documents. My parents would lose everything. Maybe go to jail. So you became his spy, I said flatly. Not exactly. I gave him some basic information, nothing confidential. Stalled for time while I tried to figure out if the threat was real. And somehow this led to you sleeping with my mother? He looked away. That was a separate situation. Your mother and I were working late about 6 months ago. She was upset about something with your dad. We had too much to drink, and... Spare me the details, I snapped. It was one time, Liv. One horrible mistake. I felt disgusted with myself afterward. The photos showed multiple encounters. He shook his head vehemently. Those other photos were staged. After that first mistake, Dela Cruz somehow found out. He had photos from the office that night. He said if I didn't continue the relationship with your mother and let his photographer document it, he'd send the original photos to you and your father. And my mother went along with this? He was blackmailing her too. Something about your father's finances. Michael took a tentative step toward me. Liv, we were trapped. Every time we tried to end it, he threatened exposure. I wanted to tell you so many times, but your mother insisted we handle it ourselves. So you were going to marry me while carrying on this charade with my mother? How was that supposed to work, Michael? We weren't. 2 weeks ago, I told Dela Cruz I was done. That I'd take the consequences rather than continue living this lie. Your mother agreed. We hoped he was bluffing. He wasn't. No. Michael looked defeated. He waited until it would hurt the most. I sank onto the couch, my wedding dress crumpling beneath me. Even if what you're saying is true, you still slept with my mother. 1 time or 20 times, it doesn't matter. I know, he whispered. I'll regret it for the rest of my life. We sat in silence, the waves crashing outside the only sound. What happens now? I finally asked. Your father knows everything. I told him after you left the church. About Dela Cruz, the blackmail, all of it. And he punched me in the face, then went to confront your mother. Michael touched his jaw gingerly. I deserved worse. Yes, you did. I stood up. I need you to leave. Live. No. I've heard enough. Maybe everything you said is true. Maybe Dela Cruz manipulated you both. But you still made choices, Michael. You chose to hide the truth from me, to continue with the wedding knowing what had happened. You robbed me of the chance to make my own informed decision. He nodded slowly. You're right. I was a coward. Yes, you were. I walked to the door and opened it. Now get out. Dawn found me still in my wedding dress, sitting on the beach as the sun rose over the Pacific. My phone had finally gone silent after a night of relentless calls and texts. The tide was coming in, waves creeping closer to my bare feet. I'd made a decision during the long, sleepless night. Whether Michael's story was true or partially true or complete fiction didn't matter. What mattered was what I did next. I stood up, my once perfect dress now sandy and wrinkled, and walked to the edge of the water. The morning light caught the diamond on my finger, the engagement ring I'd forgotten to throw back at Michael. With a deep breath, I slipped it off and hurled it as far as I could into the ocean. The tiny splash was anticlimactic, but the weight that lifted from my shoulders was anything but. My phone buzzed with a text. James, you okay? Tell me where you are. I'll come get you. For the first time, I replied, Beach house. Come alone. While I waited, I finally, carefully, stepped out of my wedding dress. Standing in just my slip, I folded the expensive white gown and placed it at the tittle-line. The incoming waves began to saturate the fabric, pulling it gradually toward the depths. I watched without regret as my almost wedding floated away. James found me there, staring out at the horizon. Quite a show yesterday, he said, handing me his jacket. You okay? No, I answered honestly. But I will be. Dad's filing for divorce, he said quietly. He came to my place last night, told me everything. About Dela Cruz, the blackmail, all of it. Do you believe it? James shrugged. Some of it. Enough to understand, not enough to forgive. I nodded. Same. What will you do now? I turned to face him, feeling the strength of certainty for the first time since opening that envelope. First, I'm going to take a very long shower and burn these undergarments. Then I'm going to hire the best lawyer in California and sue Victor Dela Cruz for everything he's worth. James raised an eyebrow. On what grounds? Harassment, blackmail, invasion of privacy, intentional infliction of emotional distress. And when that's done, I'm going to dismantle his entire company, client by client. Ambitious. He smiled slightly. Need a partner in this venture? I happen to have marketing experience and a personal vendetta. I linked my arm through his. I thought you'd never ask. Behind us, the last visible piece of my wedding dress disappeared beneath the waves. Ahead, a future I hadn't planned for but would embrace anyway. Some bridges aren't meant to be mended. Some betrayals can't be forgiven. But in that moment, with the sun warming my face and a plan forming in my mind, I knew one thing for certain. This was far from over. Was I wrong to expose their affair so publicly? Should I have confronted them privately instead of humiliating everyone involved? Tell me what you would have done in my position.